Maryland basketball has all the tools to make a run in March.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at Inside Black and Gold. So make sure you guys head over to insideblackandgold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax, ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed. Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert. Maryland basketball, I think, has all the tools to make a run, not only in the Big Ten tournament, but also in March Madness. Yesterday, I said it. I think Maryland basketball is the best team in the Big Ten. And I know I had some conflict in my comment, and I hope I do. When you really get into it, when you really look at it, Maryland, by a lot of the metrics, is the best team in the Big Ten. And by a lot of the experts, is kind of the underlining team. I mean, we're top, what are we, 11th in the country? So I don't want to say underlining team, but one of the teams that are probably going to be a top 3 seed in the tournament, probably going to be a 4 seed that can win the entire thing. And I agree with the experts. I agree with a lot of people are saying for the Terps. A lot of people just don't know because they haven't seen us play basketball yet this year that Maryland basketball has all the tools to really go as far as they want. I'm talking about in the Big Ten tournament, but also to go as far as they want in March Madness. Obviously, the Big Ten tournament's first, so we're thinking about that coming up, and we don't play until Friday because of the double bye, which puts us in a really good spot to win it. And I talked about that yesterday. I talked about how Maryland basketball has put themselves in a really good spot, I think, to win the entire thing at a 2 seed. But today's a little bit different. I want to talk about March Madness, but I also want to talk about more about why I think we have the tools to be able to win it all. I think one of the biggest things and the biggest reasons why we're able to win it all, I think it starts with the starting 5. And I'm going to get more into it, but we have 5 guys starting, and there's not much of a weakness in our starting lineup. And when you look at a Maryland team, it's a balanced team. And recently, that's what we've seen win in March Madness. It's not a team with one star. It's not a team that has 2 really good freshmen like Rutgers, for example. Like, that's not what wins. If you have 5 guys like Maryland does, and you have 5 guys that average double digits for the Terps, and 5 guys that can really make it happen, and 5 guys that are really hard to game plan against, and 5 guys that you don't know who's going to go off. You don't know who's going to have 20, and you can't really hone in on one because there's other 4 guys can beat you as well. And I think that's, to me, that's the biggest reason why I think the Terps can win the tournament, is because we can beat teams in so many different ways in this starting 5. You just don't know who can get going, who's going to play at a high level. You just don't know. And all 5 guys, like I said, are in double digits. So let's say you stop Derek Queen, you still have to worry about Julian Reese and our other big man. Let's say you slow down Gillespie, you still have to worry about Selton Miguel and Rodney Rice dropping 20 each. And that's really tough to game plan against. And I think, to me, that wins later on in March because you have legitimately different guys that go off, whereas some teams they're top heavy in terms of they have 1 or 2 guys they feel really good about scoring, but if they don't have a good day, it's like there's not a ton else to go to. And to me, Maryland's not like that at all. It's like Julian Reese doesn't have a good game. Okay, we know Derek Queen came to 25. Oh, Rodney Rice is having a poor shooting day. Okay, Selton Miguel can make up for it. Oh, Rodney Rice is not having his best day shooting. Oh, Gillespie it just dropped 20 and made 4 threes. Like, you know what I mean? Maryland Terrapins lineup is really strong in that instance in terms of balance of scoring. And then we also shoot the ball really well this year from the 3-point arc, much better than we did last year. I think that's a pretty obvious statement for me to make, but we've been shooting the ball at a really high level this year. The Terps have. This year we're shooting 37% from three. And at the end of the day, if you want to make a run in March, you're going to have to shoot the ball well. You just are, because you're probably going to go against a team that randomly gets hot. And if you're going to want to stay in that game, you're going to have to shoot the ball well. Teams that don't shoot the ball well in March, and teams that haven't shot the ball all season that end up being pretty good teams during the season, they often get upset in March. Just look back to different games, and that's why I'm a little bit iffy. I don't want to call out anyone, but Michigan State, they are a team that I think could possibly get upset pretty early because, yeah, they do some good things well. Obviously, they're like the number 8 team in the country or whatever they are, but they don't shoot the ball well, and that can be scary. Where a Maryland team, you feel really good about them. We shoot the ball really well this year, 37% from three, and our three guards in our starting lineup. Gillespie's 41% from three, Seltzer Miguel's 42% from three, and Rodney Rice is 36%. And the thing about Rodney Rice is I think he's the best shooter on our team, and he's the lowest percentage out of the guys that take threes in our starting lineup. So I think that's also really big for the Terps. And then I also think I've watched some teams in college basketball. There's not, I don't want to say there's few, but there are few teams that have the dominance of the backcourt and the front court that the Terps have, where you can go inside to score or you can score from your guard spot, which is similar to what I talked about before, but it's a little bit different in terms of we really can beat you in two different ways that a lot of teams can beat you with guard play, but they just don't have the big man that can score down low. Maybe their big man is more just a lob threat. Maybe he blocks shot, but he doesn't provide much offense. Or some people have really good big man and guys that can bang down low, like Michigan, for example. Just to give you another Big Ten example, I think they have two really good bigs down low, but I think their guard play is suspect. And there's plenty of other teams where it's vice versa, where they have really good guard play, but they just don't have much big man offensive presence. And Maryland gets both, and I think both at a relatively high level. I don't know if there's a better front court duo in the country, to be honest, than Queen and Reese. You could argue the guys at Michigan. You could argue a couple other guys. But then our guard play is also really elite in the starting five. And so when you can beat teams scoring inside and you have two guys in your starting lineup that can score inside, that makes a lot of pressure on the defense. But then your guards are no slouches either. That's a really tough team to beat in the Big Ten tournament and in March Madness, because they can just score in a bunch of different ways. So if you stop one thing, if you plug up one thing, something else is probably going to get open. In basketball, a lot of basketball, honestly, in sports in general, a lot of it, when you're playing defense, a lot of it's kind of picking your poison, whether that's in football, whether that's, are you going to play too high safeties and not as many guys in the box, and you're going to allow them to run the ball because you don't think they're as good of a running team, but you're not going to let them have the deep pass, or you're going to bring a bunch of people in the box because they're a really good running football team, and you're going to allow the deep shots because you think their quarterback can't throw. Same kind of thing for basketball. You're going to double team Queen and Reese and let Maryland probably get some open shots, or guys can attack rotations from the guard play, or are you going to say, we're going to take out Gillespie and Rodney Rice, not let them be able to get going from the three-point arc, but we're going to leave single coverage against Derek Queen and Julian Reese, and all of a sudden those two guys have 20. So I feel really good about Maryland's guard play and kind of what they are, but I also feel awesome about our big man, our two bigs. And then also, I think we have a star in Derek Queen. March, a lot of it, yeah, having a balanced lineup is really important, but sometimes you just need a guy to make a March Madness type of run. Like sometimes you're going to need a guy that drops 25 in the Sweet 16 and drops 25 in the round of 32 and allows you to advance. Like sometimes you're going to need that. And I think Derek Queen is that guy and that star that sometimes you just need a guy that is going to make a huge moment in March. You see it every year. There's always a couple of guys that just make their name in March, and Derek Queen already has their name out there. But sometimes you just need a guy that can go crazy, a star that you feel really good about. The other part about Maryland is they really have a couple other guys that can really do that as well too, where people are suddenly looking at Jacoby Gillespie and say, This Maryland guard in this round of 32 or the Sweet 16 or Elite 8 has 25 tonight and 8 assists, and he's the reason Maryland's up by 5 with 2 minutes to go. And so I think the Terps have that. And then we've also been pretty good defensively all year. KenPom, we were top 25 defensive team. We've done a really good job at that defensively. And Kevin Willard has done a good job with that. And then I want to add on one last point. A lot of March is being hot at the right time. Remember NC State when they made their run, they were hot at the right time. A team that wasn't supposed to make the tournament got hot at the right time, won the ACC tournament, and then that carried on into March. A lot of teams that end up making runs just get hot at the right time, and I feel like Maryland basketball right now is peaking and is hot at the right time. And then I think that's important. I think that's a lot of what basketball is. I think a lot of basketball is playing well at the right time. I'm a firm believer in that. I think that's just the way basketball goes. And so I think Maryland has a team right now that is playing at a high level right now and is hot. And so I really think we have the tools, and that applies for the Big Ten tournament. That applies to the March Madness when that comes around in a week or so. And so I think we have the tools to make runs. But what are the actual keys to making a run? What does Maryland have to do well? What am I scared about? We'll talk about that next. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes is waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, and everything with 100%. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. So what are the keys, I think, to making a late run? I talked about why I think Maryland basketball can make a late run, but what are my concerns? How does Maryland kind of counter those? How do those not come up? And I first want to start off addressing the depth. It is something that scares me, especially in March, because a lot of it is playing on quick turnarounds, playing a lot of games. Like, look at the Big Ten tournament. Thank God we have the double bye, but if Maryland ends up making it to the Big Ten championship, that's 3 games in a row, 3 days, 3 games in a row. They haven't played that much basketball yet, and I think Kevin Willard will do a good job if that ends up being the case of getting guys in, playing a lot of different guys more than probably what we're used to, just because winning the Big Ten tournament is great, but at the end of the day, you want to do something in the dance. And so I think he'll do a good job of that, but I still think that's a concern to me. I feel really good about our starting 5, and they're going to play a lot of minutes, especially in March Madness, in the Big Ten tournament too. But the thing is, to me, they really have to push themselves, and they really can't get tired. In basketball, sometimes guys get fatigued. Sometimes guys get tired, and I think a Maryland lineup, the key is you got to stay healthy. You got to stay conditioned. You have to stay right as much as possible, because we just don't have much coming off the depth or off the bench in terms of depth that we feel good about. And to me, that's the key, is the starting lineup staying not tired, staying conditioned, staying relaxed. I think that's important for this Terps team, because there's not a whole lot of coming off the bench that's going to bail us out this year. And to me, that's a key for the Terps. And I also think another key is Maryland continuing to shooting the ball well. If you have a poor shooting day, this is how a lot of upsets happen. Even when you go against a team much less talented than you, and you don't want to be the team. Let's say Maryland's it looks more and more like Maryland's heading towards a 4 seed is what kind of I'm getting the indicator, what it looks like. All the reports are, it looks like Maryland's going to be a 4 seed, which I'll take. I think a couple weeks ago I said I thought we were around like the 6-5 kind of range. So it looks like we're going to be going, it's probably like a 12 seed is what it looks like more than likely. And if you don't want to be one of those teams, feels like there's 12 seeds that upset 4 seeds every single year. That's a popular upset. That's one that definitely can happen. If you don't want to be one of those teams that gets upset early, you got to shoot the ball at least decently well. Maybe not be at like 40%, but you got to be in the 30s. You can't have just a game where all things go terrible and you're shooting 10% from 3 and you can't really stick in the game. If you shoot the ball pretty well, I think that's a key for the Terps. I think, to me, a smaller key that a lot of people won't hone into, a lot of people won't pay as much attention to, is Derek Queen. Obviously, overall as a player, has to play well. People are going to pay attention to that. He's the biggest name on our team. He has potential to be a lottery pick. Obviously, he's Big Ten Freshman of the Year, all Big Ten first team, all that stuff. But that's not really what I'm talking about as a key. Like, that's obvious. Like, Derek Queen, you want him to play well. Or I think, to me, Derek Queen has games where he turns over the ball way too much, and you got to limit that. Like, there are games where he just turns over the ball way too much. Like, he had 5 turnovers against Northwestern, and we were able to get away with the win because they're not very good. If you look at some of these other games, Michigan State, a game that we lost, 3 turnovers. Iowa, a team that wasn't very good, a game that we were able to get away with, he had 5 turnovers, 5. Like, as a team, we probably want to be about under 10. And if Derek Queen has 5 turnovers like he did against UCLA as well, like he did against Northwestern as well, it's going to be really tough if Derek Queen has half the turnovers against some of the better teams. And you might be able to get away with that in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, in the quarterfinal game with whoever you're playing. We'll see how that ends up shaping up. We still got time to see that. You might be able to get away with that, but pretty soon into the Big Ten tournament after a round, and if you hopefully get there after a round in March Madness or 2, you're not going to be able to allow Derek Queen to have 5 turnovers. And that's been something I've kind of been biting my tongue at all year. And he's obviously an extreme talent. He's obviously probably he is our most talented guy in terms of his potential as a basketball player. He just can't turn over the ball as much as he does. And then I think something else that's a key to me, you're going to be in some late game battles. That's just the way it is. You got to realize the other team wants to win too. Everybody knows that. But my key is you can't have some of the hiccups that Maryland basketball has had so far this year late in games. There's been games where it's just been terrible down the stretch where it just doesn't make sense for what we're doing. It's like, are we trying to win the game? Like, what are we trying to do? There's been plenty of games like that for the Terps where the late game execution is just bad. I think we had a stretch where it was really poor. I mean, the one that sticks out of my head is the Michigan State one. But there's been others where we've been pretty bad down the stretch, which doesn't allow us to win the game, like Oregon, Washington, Northwestern, Ohio State. Ohio State definitely was one where we could have won, but Michigan State, I'll talk about that example. You can't have situational basketball and not do it really well in March Madness because it's just how the basketball gods work. If you're not going to win the situation game, if you're not going to do things the right way, like the Michigan State game, if you're going to give them a chance to take a last-second shot after you being able to run down the clock and it should have been us taking a last-second shot with whoever, and you're going to allow them to get a shot off, the basketball gods are going to try and do some crazy stuff because that's just the way March Madness works. Crazy stuff happens, and you can't let it happen. You have to control the game late in terms of situational stuff. Some things, if the team hits a half-court shot, you can't control. If the team does something crazy, you can't always control that. But in terms of the situation, taking the last shot, not turning over the ball, doing different things late, Kevin Willard taking timeouts at the right time, that's really important in March. There's been so many different examples of teams not doing things the right way late. So I think this Maryland team struggled with that, and that makes it harder to win games. Who does Maryland most want to play in the Big Ten tournament? We'll talk about that. We'll analyze the bracket a little bit and talk about that next. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-to-go snacks to keep you fueled all day. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried the Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess. Just get great foods in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Let's talk a little bit about the Big Ten tournament. I want to talk about teams I want to play in this Big Ten tournament. Teams that Maryland, I think, matches up well with, teams that I feel good about. So actually today, Iowa and Ohio State play today, and I'll go ahead and say this. I want Iowa to win that game. It might not matter in the grand scheme of things, but I want Iowa to win that game because I feel like Maryland playing Ohio State is a harder team to beat than this Iowa team. I think Iowa's really poor defensively, and obviously the bracket doesn't work like that. Like the winner of Iowa Ohio State has to play Illinois, and then the winner of that gets to play us. But just in case, this is March. That's a theme for me. Weird stuff be happening. And so to me, I rather play Iowa. So I'd rather Iowa win that game. I think Ohio State's scary in a couple different areas. That Bruce Thorn kid, I don't want much of him. I think Iowa isn't as scary. I don't think Iowa has as much juice. I don't think Iowa's as good. I think they're poor defensively. We beat them by 25. We put a ton of points on them. We put up like 100 points. Ohio State beat us on a buzzer beater. I thought we were the much better team. I think both teams were better than, which is how it should be when you're the 2 seed in the tournament, while Ohio State is 10 and Iowa's 15. But that's just something I think I rather see. And then whoever wins that Iowa-Ohio State game plays Illinois, and I want whoever wins the Iowa-Ohio State game to beat Illinois. I think Illinois is tough. I think we got Illinois on a good day for us. I thought they didn't play their best basketball when you look at both teams' perspective fairly. I think Maryland's better than Illinois, but Illinois has turned it on lately. And they're I talk about teams getting hot. They're one of the hotter teams in the tournament. And obviously I'm going to say I want one of the lower seeds to beat Illinois. But I think Illinois has been really good recently. They just beat Purdue. They slapped Michigan. They slapped Iowa. And this all comes after they kind of got beat pretty good by a Duke team. They got beat by almost 50 points against a really good Duke team that's number 1 in the country in the AP poll. Then they turned things on and now are ranked 24th in the country, beat a good Michigan team, beat a good Purdue team. So I think I don't want to see Illinois, but if that tends to be the case, then there's a pretty good likelihood that they we're probably going to play Illinois in the next round. And if we get past them, I really think it's going to end up being Purdue against Michigan. In terms of time, I'll say it's that. I'd rather play Michigan. I don't know why, but I just don't really like playing Purdue in these situations. I just don't. I think Smith, the point guard, is really good. I think he's tough. We had a bad game plan against him in the first game. We were going under a lot of screens. He was knocking stuff down. That was a game we probably should have had. It was close. I don't want to say we probably should have won, but that was one where it was like if we had a better game plan against Smith, I think we could have won the game. I'd rather play Michigan. I'm not scared of the Michigan guard play. I think their bigs are really good, but I think we match up really well against a Michigan team that I'm not as scared about. And then talking about the other side of the bracket, to be completely honest, I don't mind seeing Michigan State. And a lot of people are going to say that's crazy. A lot of people are going to say it's a bad take. I just think we're better than them, and I think if we get another crack at them, that's probably a good thing. I think UCLA will be fine. I think Oregon's a sneaky team that could potentially make a run. I think Wisconsin's good, but I don't mind seeing that Michigan State team. So that's kind of how I see it. Some more of it will start to play out. I'm kind of waiting for it to play out. I'm like tired of talking about we have the tools to win, whatever. I want to talk about an actual game that we're going to play, but of course, we're blessed with the double bye, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.